Hello, America. Thank you for joining me this evening on a Friday night at J Slay Made in the USA. You know, you could be a lot of places, but you came here to spend this time with me, and I sure appreciate it. Tonight's guest is Natalie Beisner, and it's a pre-recorded interview, guys. I'm getting into doing this more where I film the interview when the guest can actually come on, but then the guest is asked to come back at the end of the actual live stream to do a Q&A based on the questions that you guys will put in the live chats across various platforms. And this thing is streaming to X, formerly Twitter. It's streaming to Rumble. It's going to Facebook. It's going, probably several places that'll get a shadow ban. But anyway, so just remember that we are going to be staying on after the interview to answer your questions, as well as just, if you have great thoughts or interesting topics you'd like to bring up and you want to hear our take, bring them up. So with that, enjoy the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on J Slay Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Due to the exposure in heavy news coverage of world-famous traffickers like Jeffrey Epstein and films like The Sound of Freedom, there's no doubt that among the common man and woman, there's an increased awareness and desire to fight child sex trafficking. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on J Slay Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Guys, I've got a really exciting guest today first of all, for this reason. Back in 2020, a lot of us considered that a waking up year for ourselves. I know for me, I always had, conservative and freedom-based beliefs. I believed in our Constitution, et cetera. But it was a very shallow level. And when things went awry and nothing seemed to be working out, I began to wonder why. It's like, okay, is it really a good team versus a bad team here? Or are there deeper things at play? So I went down the rabbit holes and I became much more informed, hopefully, I believe, on the structure of things, how it's working. And it was extremely enlightening for me, and the world makes more sense now. But it only made me that much more of a freedom fighter. For others, like my guest today, 2020 was an awakening from a completely different worldview. Natalie Jean Beisner was a Hollywood actress, hardcore Democrat. I mean, as far left probably as, maybe not as far as you could go, but pretty far. And many things happened between 2020, 2021 that led her away from that entire philosophy. And I don't want to necessarily say a Republican, but into a conservative mindset. And she now has these large platforms on X, which is formerly Twitter, on Instagram, which is where I discovered her, and just does an incredible job with monologues. I got to find out if she uses a teleprompter. But without further ado, I can't wait to interview you and talk to you. Natalie, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with this. There's a lot of people that do know you. There's a lot that don't. So give us the brief, intro into your walk away, kind of what I talked about. Where were you at in life in 2020 and what's the key moments that happened?
I was pretty lost at the beginning of 2020 and prior to ever hearing anything about COVID. I had been an actress for a long time, but I had left that around 2018 for many reasons. One of them, not the main one, but one of them was the intense push for racial diversity above everything in theater, which is my first love. I really love stage plays, and also in Hollywood and in commercials. And that had sort of rubbed me the wrong way. I began hearing talk of white privilege and that kind of thing. And I was still very much on the left, still very Democrat. It wasn't enough for me to open my eyes to anything else, but it felt like a little mini betrayal to this craft that I loved so much and had studied for, 10 or 15 years.
Right.
So I was kind of very lost in 2020. And maybe that's part of why I was able to see things that you and so many others were able to see, but a lot of people still haven't seen, which surprises me very often. But the moment that shifted things for me, I was very much on board with the response to COVID at first. I was worried about having lost my jobs. I lost 2 jobs overnight, and I do need to work. I can't afford to not. And I do help out some family members and that kind of thing. So that was a concern. But other than that, I was wearing the mask. I was staying home. I didn't see my family. I lived in a weird roommate situation, but I, stayed home and did all of it. And I was very, very, very surprised and very hurt. I don't have a better way. I guess I felt betrayed on a fundamental level. The moment that shifted everything for me was summer 2020, being told that we could go out and protest or riot on behalf of BLM, but we couldn't go to work. And whenever I questioned any of that and said that I needed to go to work and that I had questions about the response to COVID and why was it that medical professionals and politicians were supporting these protests, which I support your right to protest, not to riot. But it was just such a dichotomy between responses, and no 100%. One could really tell me why, other than the fact that I was racist and selfish. And that really struck a chord. I mean, I didn't become a conservative overnight, but I felt harmed by it because I very much needed to go back to work. I ended up having, a grandmother die alone. And it just, I really understood that nothing else mattered besides BLM. And if you were going to perish from COVID, and if you had any other concerns at all in 2020, they didn't matter. And that stayed that way in Los Angeles throughout 2021. We ended up having vaccine passports. So it wasn't like a little blip on the radar and, I'm going to go back to the Democrat Party. Los Angeles was threatening to bring back masks, a year ago. So last summer. So I've been proven right every step of the way. And then, of course, the more that I read and researched, that's what made me really a conservative and a stronger voice in the conservative movement. But that was the shifting moment.
Yes. And it makes so much sense. And I'll interject this as well. Even for conservatives, we were hit with such an overwhelming blast of confusion between COVID. And then I can't remember the girl's name, but Oprah had put the one girl that died in the crossfire. Gosh, I can't think of her name. Anyway, she was on the cover of her magazine, and then you got the George Floyd thing, and then you got all these little hits where you were given either half truths or perverted truths about race, but you don't know what to believe. And then there's the blackout day on Instagram where everybody does the square. Even me, who I feel like I've had a pretty good handle on race, being a former pro athlete, and I've lived in downtown Atlanta. I mean, I've gotten around, so I even began to question this, like, what if this systemic racism thing is really like, what if I've missed the boat? And so I did a deep dive once again on race, and I looked into it and I saw this is a sham meant to control the public and meant to change America. And it's funded in big ways by people like George Soros and other, it's just not, this is not a grassroots thing. And, George Floyd's family is getting $36 million and, all in the midst of when we're not supposed to go outside or go, do anything, but you can riot. So I fully understand that. A question I would have for you is, was there a sense, because I've seen it with people here, though we've got plenty of Democrats and plenty of people that would call themselves in the middle, because they don't want to ruffle feathers, and they may logically see in the back of their mind exactly the things you saw. But was there this like impending sense of, if I start to speak out loud these logical things that I know make sense, I'm going to lose social life, I'm going to lose career opportunities. Was there other senses of like impending doom outside of just, hey, I'm just going to be logical and, tell the truth?
I think I did have a sense once I started speaking out about COVID and BLM that I would never be able to go back to acting. And because I always kind of toyed with the idea, I had left a couple of years earlier and I thought, well, maybe I'll go back. I had just we had started filming a feature film in January, February 2020, and we were supposed to come back at it. But obviously that didn't happen for quite a long time. But that had sort of like reawakened this love that I have. And it had been a really awesome experience. But I did have a slight understanding of what I was getting into, but not really. And I'll be honest, as I said, I was lost prior to this. So I didn't have a bunch of these strong relationships. And I can't say that I lost, best friends of years and years. I know people have that story and it's not uncommon and that's a tragedy. But I lost a lot of acquaintances. I've gotten a lot of hatred for it. Like I said, I think before we started recording, I don't think I could ever go back to mainstream Hollywood. Not that I had a bunch of success there, but I did do a lot of theater. I love theater and no one would have ever seen me in anything, but I can't go back to that, So I had an understanding, but I felt compelled to do it because I think like so many people, I don't think I'm unique in this. I could see what was coming. And this was, early 2021. And I knew for a fact that the shot wouldn't be optional after the way that we had reacted to COVID. And I knew that masks weren't going anywhere anytime soon. So I felt like I had to speak about it because it was just so clearly wrong for the community. So many people were suffering in so many ways and we're continuing to suffer. I think we're just now maybe scratching the surface of the effects of what we did with lockdowns to everyone. I work with kids with autism and they regressed in terms of their social skills. So there's all these little domino effects that people don't even really think of besides the obvious. And so that's what compelled me to speak out. And then, like I said, keep speaking. Because once I started researching and listening to people, I realized, oh, maybe I'm actually a conservative. Because for me, what I've found is that all the logic, all the truth, I think because God is on our side, but all of it is on the side of conservative principles for the most part. I found it's really just emotion on the left. And that's what I had. That's what was driving me when I was on the left is emotion, and it's strong emotion, but it's just emotion.
Is it a lot of emotion based on, catchphrases and taglines like, women's equality, for instance? I can just tell looking at your old film clips that I would have said that's a feminist actress. That's going to be a hard left feminist actress. And you just get the sense of those things. What would have been driving you at the time to believe what you believe? Was it more social pressure, or was it just you thought that Democrats were nice and Republicans were bad people?
I did. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. I was an actor for a long time. I think it's kind of reflexive. I'm from the millennial generation, and it seems like a lot of people in my generation. I also think that because I was not a zealot, I didn't know what I was talking about. I didn't know anything. I basically voted every 4 years for the Democrat president, including Hillary Clinton. So that's all I did. It wasn't like I was really involved. I wasn't in the streets or anything like that. But that's almost worse because I just wasn't even paying attention. But I did think that Democrats were the compassionate people. And I also think that being born, post-sexual revolution and in the era that I was born, I think so many of us, maybe even people who think of themselves as conservative, are default feminists in many ways. We just have these default beliefs about what is sex and how we can engage in it and what right we have to free sex, all of that. And I don't even think that you question it because you don't have to. So even if you're not a hardline leftist, you do have certain ideals that have been programmed into you that someone 100 years ago or even less wouldn't really have had those ideals. And in some ways that's good. Obviously we've made a good progress in the last 100 years. I'm not arguing for going back to that, but I would question a lot of what we have been sold as the truth. I think most of us nowadays actually are feminists, and I don't think that's a good thing. And people might disagree with me on that. And most people nowadays are brainwashed to some extent by the sexual revolution. So I didn't have to question it.
Yeah. When it comes to feminism, there's a quote that I always pull out. I've got it right here. This is one of the most well-known feminist from the ivory tower of academia. Her name is Linda Gordon. Have you heard of her? She wrote a famous book, several famous feminism books, but here was what she actually said about feminism. This is her quote. "The nuclear family must be destroyed, and people must find better ways of living together. Whatever its ultimate meaning, the breakup of families now is a revolutionary process. No woman should have to deny herself any opportunities because of her special responsibilities to her children. Families will be finally destroyed only when a revolutionary social and economic organization permits people's needs for love and security to be met in ways that do not impose divisions of labor or any external roles at all." I mean, it's a mess of concepts there, but it's just interesting to me that someone that had such sway, politically and in academia regarding feminism just came out and said it. This is about the breakdown of the family to go along with a revolutionary, non-imposition of labor.
How long ago did she write that?
Well,
probably a while, huh?
Yeah, that was back in the 90s, but she started writing books that brought her to the forefront back in the 70s. But I always think that quote's pretty powerful considering she said it out loud,
Yeah. And isn't it interesting that BLM used to have on their website, the breakdown of the nuclear family. So all of this cultural Marxism, it all ties together. And that seems to be obviously the end goal. This intense focus on identity and your race and your gender and your little boxes. Yeah.
No doubt about it. Tell me about the spiritual journey. You've mentioned the word lost several times. I mean, we can talk all day about going from progressive to conservative beliefs, but what about the internal you and God? How did that integrate with all this?
I was raised Catholic and I went to Catholic school. And like a lot of people around 18, 19, I left the church. It coincided with a little bit of the scandal that was going on in the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. That kind of came to light at the time that I was around that age. So maybe I used that as an excuse. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But in 2020, when all this was going on, 2021, I started for the first time feeling compelled to open my Bible. Prior to that, for many years, I think I would have been vacillating between agnostic and atheist. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's interesting. I had sort of a political shift and then it brought about the spiritual shift. And it was a little challenging because all of the churches were shut down for the most part in Los Angeles still at that time. So it was a lot of solitary stuff. And I felt some disappointment and confusion in the church's response, obviously, among many other people's institutions' response to COVID. But yeah, I think I just realized that the way that I was living was making me unhappy. And a lot of people, obviously, in Los Angeles, a lot of people around the nation today, seem unhappy. We have, especially as women, going back to that, more rights than ever before, but we seem more unhappy than ever before. And I just felt that very strongly that there must be a better way to live. And I'm still, I'm still going through the Bible for the first time as an adult. I went to Catholic school, like I said, but we didn't really meditate on the Bible. I still have a long way to go, but I consider myself a born again Christian and before I'm ever a conservative, and a conservative before I'm ever a Republican. And it all just kind of happened in 2020, 2021, very slowly. It seems quick because of what I lived before. And it was only the span of 2 years, but I like to emphasize that it wasn't just this weird, I woke up one day and decided to completely change. It was a very slow, and there was nothing else going on too. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car in Los Angeles. So we were all locked down. So I did have this time to kind of self-reflect in a way that a lot of people did. And I came out the other end of it, Christian conservative.
Yeah. Well, to me, those transcendental values have to come from a transcendental that's probably the wrong word. Transcendent. That's the right word. God, so God creates these laws and orders and values, and that trickles down into, like you said, the conservatism. And then if the party gets it right or not, that's up to them. But I fully understand the integration between your reconnection with God and the faith that came upon you alongside of this value shift. I mean, it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I think someone recently said, and maybe but Yuri Bezmenov, who has that famous interview, right, where he's talking about the brainwashing. Yes. Someone told me that maybe in that interview or somewhere else, he said that in order to break out of the brainwashing, you have to have a moment of personal crisis. And that very much is the truth for me, that I think we all did in 2020. And like I said, I don't know why some people are still in their brainwashing, because it was such a crisis for all of us, but it was really a crisis for me. And that really just struck a chord with me. And years of brainwashing, I probably still have some, but it was able to allow me to break free. And once you start questioning things, then you start questioning everything. Not even in necessarily a conspiracy theorist way, just all these things that I believe and all these things that I held to be true and all these principles that I was so sure about, are they really even true? Because these people who I thought cared about me, I genuinely thought the government cared about me. I thought Democrats cared about me.
Yeah.
They don't care about me at all. I thought they were for the underdog and for the underprivileged. And I saw that to be not true in 2020 in the last several years. So then you can start questioning other things as well. And I'm proud of that.
You should be. And the Democrat Party, they're going to run out of legroom with this whole, we're the underdog, we're the victims, we're going up against the man. At this point, they are the government. They are the institutions. Their values are American values right now. I'm not saying that that's the old school American values, but they just can't get away with that forever because they control everything at the moment, it seems. We talked a little bit early on, or I introduced you as having these unbelievable monologues on Instagram and on Twitter, and people can follow you at Natalie. Is it Natalie Beisner or Natalie Jean Beisner?
On Twitter, or on X, it's NJ Beisner, and on Instagram, it's Natalie Jean Beisner.
There we go.
But I have a feeling if you just type in Natalie Beisner, something will pop up. That's probably me.
Yeah. Well, I'll link it in the description anyway, but I want everybody to check this out.
For a long time now, women have been denying, controlling, manipulating our bodies, our biology, in an effort to live, work, exist, have sex exactly like men. So is it really any wonder that nowadays we have a growing group of men who are denying, controlling, manipulating their bodies, their biology, in an effort to live, exist, succeed, have sex like women, to the point of breastfeeding and having cramps? I even hear talk of uteruses somehow, some way, someday. And I am not saying that feminism directly led to this like A to B. I'm saying that it paved the way because the culture in which we live matters. And for a long time now, we have lived in a culture that prioritizes the feminine. We tell men that they are inherently privileged, inherently defective in some way, inherently oppressive. We insist that little boys sit down and shut up and behave exactly like little girls. We pass over young men for scholarships and opportunities in favor of the oppressed class. In the media, we alternatively portray men as buffoonish clowns or predatory evil monsters. We say things like the future is female and masculinity is toxic. And then also, at the same time, for a long time, because of feminism, way before Matt Walsh, no one has been able to tell you what a woman is. And I don't mean adult human female. Most of us here can say that, and thank God. But I'm saying on a deeper spiritual level, very few people are willing or able to tell you what a woman is distinct from a man, what a woman's role is in a society, in a family, in a home, or that a woman even has a role inherently distinct from a man. So is it really any wonder that nowadays we are all so confused and we think men and women are interchangeable?
Well, that kind of goes along with that quote that I read earlier. And I've got to say, like, please tell me that that's pre-scripted, or I'm just going to feel stupid because you come out with those like every day and they're so sharp. Like, I wonder, are you using a teleprompter? What's going on?
I do rehearse it. I don't write it down, but I script it in my head.
Okay.
And Instagram, if anyone wants to grow their following, I found out the hard way that Reels, they have to be 90 seconds.
Yep.
And Instagram will push those out. I'm not saying that we're not shadow banned or anything, but periodically Instagram pushes those out to people who don't follow me, for better or worse. And it's a good way to get eyes on what you're doing. So I do rehearse it beforehand.
Have you gotten strikes against your account? I know you said shadow ban, but sometimes they don't really tell you on that. But have you gotten either restrictions or blocked or anything based on your...
I'm demonetized. I have been for a long time. I don't think I'll get that back. I'm not allowed to run ads. Not that I would really want to. I tried to do subscriptions for 2 seconds and then I was banned from that. So,
and the thing is, you don't repost a lot of memes and other stuff because the algorithms are on the lookout for that. You're doing originals. I think that's why
I can fly under the radar a little bit, because I'm careful about what I say, and I do, for better or worse, I do word things in a way that I think won't upset Instagram or other. Now X is a little more free, so I think that does help. The people who are reposting everybody's stuff, those are the ones who, when I try to follow them, it says, "Are you sure you want to follow?" And
yes, I'm one of those as well. It's so annoying, the hoops that we have to jump through. What really drives me nuts, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Somebody actually wrote to me today. They said, you know what, Jeremy, I see that you're shadow banned. You need to start 3 or 4 other accounts and just make it really hard for the other side, is the way they put it. And I'm like, it wouldn't be hard for them. We're fighting on their battle. They could shut down all of my accounts at one time, give me no explanation. And what am I going to do? Like, go hire some attorneys to take on Meta? No, I don't have the time, energy. Right. What that would do is I would lose 2 to 2.5 years of hard work of building an audience, and they could do it like this. So we're fighting a battle on their turf. And there are the Truth Socials. There's the Gabs, which I like Gab. There's some other ones out there, but they're not even close to the audience size. So what do you see as the way we should navigate that?
The only thing I can see, and I can't say that I'm doing anything towards this, so I say it cautiously. I think using the platforms while we can. I know that some people want to make a big show of leaving YouTube and going exclusively to Rumble, but I say use the platforms while you can and grow your following, get your name out there if that's what you want to do, but at least speak truth. If you're already going to be speaking it, use the platform.
Right.
And then if it gets to a point where you get banned or you just can't use it anymore, you're not making money, you're all of it, then I guess, we go to the other places. I say use all of them simultaneously and continue to build, the parallel economy. I'm grateful for Rumble. I'm cautiously optimistic about what Elon Musk is doing with X. It does feel a little more free. I don't censor myself as much as I did before or as I do on other places. But that we need smart minds, tech minds to keep building. And it's sad because I think that will create genuinely 2 different nations almost. We'll be over here and they'll be over there, but it's the way that it has to be, because I'm not saying anything. I know so many people would disagree with this, but I'm not saying anything hateful. I'm not saying anything that's not objectively true, but nothing is hateful. Nothing's driven by hate for any color or any person. I'm just speaking the truth. And it's crazy that I have to worry about, and I put hard work into it. Like you said, it's crazy that I have to worry about being taken down, and that so many of us do.
Yeah, well, the whole thing on hate and what's called hate, I mean, they'll call you hateful for something that has nothing to do with, they'll call you a racist for something that has to do with nothing to do with it.
For questioning COVID. For questioning the lockdown.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah. Or if you believe that, we should have a secure border, you're a racist. It's just like, you guys have made racism everything, so it can't be anything.
Right. And that downplays racism, but also so many of these things, a secure border is compassionate. It's compassionate towards the people who want to come.
Right.
It's compassionate for us. That is the actual compassionate, humane position, to not have all these people trafficked at the border. And so time and again, even going back to abortion, the compassionate position is this one is, abortion does harm women. So what I found in researching all of this is that these positions I thought were compassionate, were for these people, were for women, for minorities, for the people at the border. They end up harming them so often. And that's what I found during COVID was this is the compassionate position, right? We're going to lock down. Only the Democrats care. And Republicans were doing it too at first, but Democrats held on and they said, DeSantis is killing people, Trump is killing people, etc. But I ended up being harmed by that compassion. So time and again, this compassionate position ends up being maybe compassionate in the short term, but really not in a real way.
No, very much so. What are you doing now to make money? You said you're not acting anymore. You've been demonetized on Instagram and maybe even Twitter. Like, how are you bringing in income these days?
Well, I've never made money speaking out. I'm called a grifter, but I'm the world's worst grifter because I don't make any money from this.
Me too, by the way.
Okay.
That's a great title, world's worst grifter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm grateful for the ad revenue share on X. I've gotten a little piece of that, but I work with a family. They have 3 biological children who have autism.
Okay.
And yeah, I enjoy doing that. I kind of stumbled into it after I lost both of my jobs during the pandemic. And I met up with this family who didn't need anything crazy from me, didn't need any kind of injection or whatnot. And so I've been doing that, just helping out. But looking forward to expanding, maybe my content and that kind of thing. But it's easier said than done.
Now, you say you're working with the 3 autistic children?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I'm sure that's, did you have some experience in that in the past?
No, I'd volunteered with kids with Down syndrome before.
Okay.
But very, 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 very different. And so
Yeah.
I'm not really trained in working with people with special needs or working with people with autism. So it's sort of hands-on training.
Well, that's really cool, and that takes courage, because I would be intimidated by that, because you think, man, I'm going to mess something up here. I don't want to screw this up. So kudos to you.
They're
on that.
Good training for being online, because they just say it like it is, and they don't. I mean, they're all very different, but I value people who are neurodivergent, because so many of us right now are afraid to speak the truth, just like common truths, like, men can't get pregnant. And a lot of people who are not neurotypical will just say the truth, even if it's offensive, even if it's things that we're not supposed to say in polite society, they will say it. And so I think that is very much an important perspective right now.
Yes. And there's an intersection here. It's interesting. This even came up. I've heard from several of my previous guests that the, what do you say? I want to say the right thing here. Neuroatypical or divergent.
Neurodivergent.
Typically what they'll tell me is they'll be like, Jeremy, the autistic community is actually in the crosshairs of the transgender agenda. And I didn't know that until recently. It's like, that is so devious. Can you give any insight on that?
I've heard that as well. Anecdotally, not any of the people I work directly with, but anecdotally, some of the things that I hear from their friends or see from their friends, yes, I see that often. And there does seem to be some kind of connection. And I don't know why it is or where it is or where it comes from, but it is concerning, because obviously this is sterilizing treatments for these people. And so you kind of wonder, are we breeding things out of the population? I don't really know. It's an interesting thing, because like what I just said, they hone in on the truth and they say the truth, and they don't have really any regard for, well, you're not really supposed to say that. So one of them asked me if I'm pregnant all the time just by looking at my belly. And it's like, no, it's just maybe not a flattering outfit, so it's things like that. But then on the flip side, there is this thing of maybe being a little bit more childlike, not wanting to grow up. And I think that's what we see a lot with this rapid onset gender dysphoria. When I was young, I had a really bad eating disorder. When my generation, it was like eating disorders were very popular. And I think there was some social contagion aspect to that, especially with young girls. And I think something does happen when you approach puberty or you start puberty for men and for women. It's uncomfortable, girls and boys. And there can be this desire to kind of like stay back and not grow these things on your body and not get all this attention. I think that might be even stronger in people who have autism, just from what I've seen, that there is a desire to remain sort of childlike, and there is a childlikeness. So I don't know if that's related to it. These are all just things that I've observed, but it really is, I don't know. I hope we get to the bottom of it, because this is so clearly, not gender dysphoria. Historically, it was like 0.01% of the population.
Totally.
Almost exclusively young boys. And the majority of cases write themselves by adulthood because nobody wants to talk about it. But the cure for feelings of gender dysphoria, which I do believe are real. I had body dysmorphia when I was younger. I believe that you can genuinely feel gender dysphoria. Transgenderism isn't real. But the cure for gender dysphoria is very often puberty. But we're not letting people go through puberty naturally. And we're like manipulating the population to be this way. I hope everything I just said was okay. Are we on YouTube?
No. Well, I mean, I do an edited version. I'm happy to say this to the viewers, like, YouTube doesn't deserve the full show. They don't want it. They don't deserve it. So I put part of it there. And then I tell everybody, if you want to see the whole thing, go to Rumble. And at some point I'll have to figure out how to stop being the world's worst grifter in competition with you and get a paywall up somehow. But that's a great way to put it. What has been the most surprising discovery? Because it's not just a value shift. I'm sure you've gone down some of the rabbit holes and connected some dots. You're like, oh my God, I'm amazed, but yes, this is true. What's been maybe one or two of the biggest surprises as you've walked away?
I think the biggest discovery for me, I don't know about surprise because it seems so logical now, but just how much everyone has been harmed and how much society has been wrecked by the sexual revolution and the way that we live right now and the way that men and women approach each other, and birth control, the pill, abortion, all of it. Everything just goes back to, like we were talking about, the family. And yeah, I don't know if it was a surprise because now it seems very logical, but that is just like this big sticking point for me. And I do feel in many ways that I was lied to, that my entire generation was lied to, probably multiple generations, because we've been living with this for a long time. And I very much wish that more people saw the truth. I don't know how to put the genie back in the bottle. I think it must start with God. I don't think it can happen just with conservative principles and like trad principles and playing trad wife online. I think it has to go back to God, because what I see very often is there's this red pill community popping up in the manosphere and things like that. And because they don't have God, they do accurately diagnose the problems in our culture. And that is something, because a lot of people are just blind even to the problems, but then their prescription is really terrible. The prescription is more of the same. And it's almost like more feminism, but the opposite of feminism. It's hating on women, and it's playing off of feminism. It's counting on women to be feminists and to be sexually liberated. So it's this vicious cycle. So to me, it's very clear that if you don't have God as the fundamental, then you're going to fight this in a totally wrong way. And it's just going to continue with us feeling so much resentment and so much hatred towards each other. That's just the one thing. Because even conservatives, whenever I talk about marriage, whenever I talk about casual sex, anything like that, conservatives will be in my comment section or in my inbox saying, oh yeah, but this and that, and I got a divorce and my friend got a divorce. And I'm sensitive to that. I understand that men have been through a lot. I can imagine that men have been through a lot with the way our society approaches divorce. But still, it's just going to be more of the same. I don't know how we get out of this unless there's God. So that's the one thing to me that even conservatives haven't really gotten down necessarily.
Well, I think it's just like you said earlier, conservatives have been swayed by culture. I grew up in a conservative family, and I almost hate using that word. I've been saying this a lot lately, because what have we conserved? I mean, truthfully, we have not really conserved anything. So we're kind of just like losers. I like to say freedom fighter or constitutional, believer or something like that. But anyhow, that's beside the point. You are making a great point, because I was brought up with that value system, going to church every Sunday, reading the Bible here. But the power of back then, VH1, MTV, the TV shows, every sitcom would make fun of the men and, would lift up the woman every time. And then it became, and it was also being an athlete. There was the whole thing about, everybody has sex when they're out on the road and all this stuff, and you're single. That's just what you do. And you let that stuff leak into your own life. And then there's heartache and there's pain that comes from that, because ultimately you're breaking a spiritual law, but there's physical issue, everything. So I just think that you are dead on the money. We cannot put the genie back in the bottle, as you said, with some like big, messaging campaign. It has to start with God, and you have to focus on your circle, your family, your children, you and your husband, or you and your wife. And you gave me the perfect segue. I wasn't going to do this, but my men's program, you nailed it. So this is, I think, a good prescription for men, at least, to begin focusing on some things within their control. Take a look.
It's no secret. The world wants you weak. There's a coordinated effort by governments, media, healthcare, education, and more to destroy men of strength entirely. This agenda slowly seduces men into weakness and compliance. They become addicted to comfort, mentally weak, and ultimately reliant on the state. But embedded within the spirit of every man, there is a deep desire to be strong and independent, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well, to become the fathers, husbands, and community leaders that God designed us to be. My name is Jeremy Sladen, and I understand the struggle firsthand. As a former professional athlete, I found myself being led down a path of confusion and weakness after my sports career ended. Slowly, I became addicted to comfort. I was sluggish, out of shape, and disconnected from God. My spiritual life was in disarray, and my marriage was at risk. I knew things had to change, and after a big wake-up call, I embarked on a personal reset that transformed my mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. After my own personal transformation, I witnessed countless men trapped in similar circumstances, targeted by a culture aiming for their irrelevance. This led me to launch the Warrior Mind, Body, and Soul program. Warrior MBS is a 70-day competitive experience that has been designed from the ground up to unleash the strong man within you. It includes a comprehensive eating plan, a personally customized workout plan based on your goals, soul-building operations to strengthen your faith, and a brotherhood of like-minded Christian men who are with you in the fight. This experience is crafted from the ground up to help you get your mojo back. Here's what others are saying about Warrior MBS.
The program was amazing for me, just for muscle toning, for overall fitness.
Great diet, great soul building ops, great people you get to meet.
One of the things I love is that I'm surrounded by like-minded men who love the Lord, men who want to be good leaders, not only in their home, but also in the community for which they live.
It's changed my life. I think it has potential to change yours. I highly encourage that you join.
The world needs men who are strong, compassionate, and resilient, and it needs them now more than ever. Join me on this journey and become a warrior in mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, so everything you were saying was like, I've got to play my commercial now.
I didn't mean to do that, but that looks really awesome.
Well,
I think that's exactly what, I didn't realize that you did that. Forgive me. But,
so for the guys watching, I just want to throw this one last thing in. We close out signups for this next round on Saturday this week. So that's, I think the second, the third, somewhere. But anyway, it's Saturday this week. So if you want to sign up, warriormbs.com. And let me know that you watched this show, and maybe I'll work in a discount. So anyhow, back to the show.
So you do it with a group. It's not like self-paced. It's where you purchase and just do it on your own. Yes,
you do it with the group. Cool. There's a lot of coaches involved. All the team, you have these small teams where the guys get to know each other, and they compete against the other teams. So it's a lot of fun. So Natalie, you coming from Hollywood and theater and understanding that world, and then me, living in middle America, even though I've lived in a lot of places, I understand how, the flyover states kind of feel about the entertainment that we're provided. It's almost like social media. If I really speak my point of view, I'm going to get shut down. If I go to the movies, I'm going to have to hold my nose at certain things because these people making these movies seem to hate my beliefs. What do you think is the future of the entertainment industry? We do see a divide right now where movies like Sound of Freedom can really take off if they're promoted correctly and get that grassroots support. So what do you see as the future?
I hope that Hollywood is seeing, even though I have no love for Hollywood and I would gladly see the whole thing just, fall into a
burn to the ground.
Hopefully everyone's okay, but I would like for the geographic place and also the cultural ideal to be no more, sadly, because I really do love like old Hollywood and that kind of thing. But I kind of think maybe Hollywood is possibly seeing the tides turn because obviously they care about profit as the bottom line always. And we've seen so much of pushback against, I make videos responding to that Snow White girl, crazy interview that she did that was just so disparaging to Snow White. And those are some of my most popular videos. So clearly it's not just conservatives, which I know we said we don't always love that word. It's not just people on the right. I think people are tired of being preached to in a lot of ways. And I imagine that must eke out over into people who are apolitical, which I don't totally understand being apolitical anymore, or people who are on the left, that just this preaching and the same old recycled story. And they try to sell us like it's new, this idea of a strong female lead and she doesn't need love. And honestly, that's been around since I was a kid. It's nothing new. And if you're going to sell it, but don't repackage it like a lie. And so I do hope that maybe Hollywood will get back to telling just good stories. That's what caused me to have some pause when I was in the industry and mostly in theater, like I said, is that it wasn't an emphasis just on good stories or on everyone's story, telling different stories. It was an emphasis on one kind of story that pushed one kind of narrative and, certainly one color a story. Yeah. And I hope maybe that they do get back to that because they see profits falling and they see, I think Disney's losing money and they see the success of Sound of Freedom. But I also do think that we need need to continue to. That's why I'm excited about, like many people, I know people had questions, but I was excited to see the success of Sound of Freedom. I'm excited for things that the Daily Wire is doing. I'm sure there's a bunch of other people, small studios working on things. And I think that, like we were talking about with social media, we have to continue to build our own thing, because I think that even if they make these better movies like I grew up with, I think even still people like you and me are not who they want. That's not who they want in their movies, and that's not who they want to speak to. They don't like us, I don't think. So I think we're going to have to continue to build up our own Hollywood, our own movies, our own things. And that is really, really important. And I'm sure you would agree. So many people have been talking about this lately. I think conservatives, whoever we are, have missed the boat. We make, weird, cringy Christian Hallmark movies, but not just good movies that maybe even have nothing to do with politics overtly or even God overtly, although there's nothing wrong with that, but just good movies that have American values and traditional values. And we have really missed the boat on that, on playing as part of the culture as conservatives. And I think we're playing catch up now, and we're paying for it now, because they have everything, and they do have spot on messaging about we are for the underdog. And I think that speaks to my generation and probably younger generations, because I think millennials feel like they were shafted in a lot of ways. We came of age during, the 2008 crisis. We're maybe living through another recession right now. We feel like the American dream isn't attainable to us, the picket fence and the house and the this and the that. We're not going to be able to have the things that our parents had in many ways. And I'm not saying that means we should be leftists and socialists and capitalism failed, but I do understand why it speaks to people. I do understand the struggles that people have. I just believe that conservatism is the prognosis for that, not leftism and socialism and all of this divide and be in the streets and everything. So
all that to me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, yes, you're right. I think that they are providing more of the problem as a solution, and they do it in a very sophisticated way where they tug at your heartstrings, and there's a romantic story involved and all this stuff. But they push communism. The whole thing gets worse. And then the American dream does become unattainable because they've made sure that it is. And the only place then you can have success is watching their movie feeling good. So they've got a system, but I think that people are awakening, and it is kind of good at this point that, conservatives missed the boat by not getting involved 50 years ago and really having a strong push in the media and in arts. But now we do have a chance to build our own thing, and, it may be clunky for a while. But I can see that as a path forward, because it's like, if we want to be entertained, I'm not going to go watch somebody and pay money in their pocketbook if I know that they hate my guts. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, I've gotten to a place where I can't do it anymore either. And it's hard for me. I'm so grateful that all my favorite actors died before Twitter, because it's really even hard for me to sit down and watch a famous show that everyone's into, even if it's not, and usually there is something woke in it, but even if it's not, it's like, I know what you tweeted on the toilet, and it was stupid. It was stupid, and I don't need to know. And that is why, like I said, when I made the decision to speak out, and I wasn't an A-lister, and I probably never would have been, but I understood that I was making a choice, and I can't go back, because I do think there's something to be said for, if you're going to be a cultural icon, to being for Americans, and not necessarily having us know your every single thought and who you're voting for and your stupid takes on the internet that are usually ignorant. There's something to being mysterious. And I wish that we could have put that back in the bottle, because I think that actors especially need to be mysterious. But yeah, I do. And I think I'm so excited about the Bud Light thing and the Target thing. It was the first time I ever participated. It wasn't hard to boycott Bud Light, but it was hard to boycott Target, and it is still. But I'm excited about those kind of things, because they are making it to where we cannot ignore it anymore. And it's hard, and it's more expensive to boycott these things, and to not go to Target, and to not go to businesses that hate you. And it's almost impossible, really, but it is worth it. And I think they are making it to where we can no longer ignore it. And that's good. And we have a real opportunity as
anyone center or center right to be the umbrella, because they push people out. And it's always that thing of, I didn't leave the party left me. That's what I felt at first. Now I feel as though I left the party because I realized I am a conservative and this is what I believe. But they push so many people out. And if you don't check off all the boxes, you're out. So we have the opportunity to be not letting go of our principles and ideals just so that everyone feels welcome, but we have the opportunity to be the umbrella party movement in a way that maybe we didn't have a few decades ago.
Oh yeah, and we're pulling in, all races, all flavors of people that were previously of a different stripe that are now saying, I just can't do that anymore. And as long as I feel like the conservatives did a pretty good job of embracing you. I think we've got to keep doing that. We can't hold grudges, and we got to welcome people with open arms. Tell us, Natalie, where people, aside from, we know Twitter and Instagram, I'll link to that. What about this, the Walkaway Walkathon or Walkacon or something?
Walkacon, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be at the 5-year anniversary of the Walkaway movement started by Brandon Strock, who has been one of the people viciously maligned and persecuted over January 6th.
Doubt.
And David Harris Jr. will be there. Carrie Lake will be there. Laura Trump will be there, along with many others. It's like a weekend-long thing, the weekend of November 10th. And I'm going to be sharing my story there and speaking, and a bunch of other
city?
People will be there. It's in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, there'll be a rally the second day. Yes, yeah. So I've never been to Florida, and I haven't been out of California really in the last few years. So it'll be exciting.
Now, will it mostly all be former liberals, former Democrats, or will you have like a lot of people who've, like myself, who've been conservative for a long time? Will they attend as well?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think there's just a couple of us who are speaking to share, that kind of story, the walkaway story. And then I think a lot of the other people on the stage, the names that people would actually want to come see, those are longtime conservatives. So there'll be a good mix.
Gotcha.
And it's for everyone, you don't have to be, there's a walkaway app too, if anyone's interested.
Oh, cool.
And you can share your story, because there used to be a Facebook group, I guess. This was before my time. And of course, Facebook shut it down to the tune of thousands and thousands of people. But it's for everyone, anyone who, you don't have to be conservative Christian, and you don't have to have walked away. It's for anyone who's just questioning what's going on, basically.
Very cool. Well, send me that link if you don't mind, or whatever I guess the app is called. Walkaway?
Walkaway.
Okay, that's simple enough. All right. Well, very good. And Natalie, I wouldn't normally cut it off right now because I think we'd have more to talk about. I want to have you back on sometime.
I'd love that.
Thank you. I'd love to have you back.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, so guys, obviously there was kind of a awkward cutoff there at the end, but it was because I got a text message that was kind of within my family, and it surprised me. So something I needed to handle right then, but that's why we got off that way. And, I want to tell you guys that I appreciate you watching, logging on, all of those things. But when it comes to the live streaming versus like the recording, I'm trying to figure all that out. What's the best way to do this? And I would love it if I could continue to record the actual interview, but have my guest, ready to jump on at the end of the interview. But it's going to take you guys actually, putting in questions in the live chat, putting in your thoughts, even, strong opinions, opposing or with or whatever. All that is great. Hold on. We just got one more. Oh, somebody just told me it takes a while in YouTube to gain a loyal following, and he's right. It does. And, YouTube has, they've banned my channels in the past. They've shadow banned me. So it's difficult to grow it. And I'm willing to be patient, but I'm also willing to do full live streams with guests, that don't have a recording involved whatsoever. So, at this point, I guess we'll close it out tonight because I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate you watching. And I do think that Natalie and other guests like her that have walked away from a belief system that they held to very strongly, even if it was just based on emotion, that walkaway movement. I got to download that app because she said you can read the stories of people who have walked away from not only a political party or, ideology that they didn't really even understand, but a social life and their friends. And, it's a very difficult thing to overcome. So I applaud her for doing that. And, yeah, I'm going to download that app and check it out. So you should too. You can find her at the links in the description, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for watching Jay Slay Made in the USA.